His teacher never called on him until the day she chose to humiliate him in front of everyone. But when he started playing, the look on her face said it all. She never saw it coming. Elijah Rivers sat by the window, his pencil tapping rhythmically against his notebook. It wasn't nerves, just a habit, one his mother always nagged him to break. But for him, it helped him think. The classroom at Jefferson Middle School in Little Rock, Arkansas, buzzed with the usual pre-lesson chatter. But Elijah? He stayed focused on the worksheet in front of him. He liked getting things done early. Ms. Abigail Thornton stood at the front, skimming her notes. 15 years of teaching 6th grade had given her a reputation, strict but fair, at least, to the ones she favored. Elijah had never been one of them. She wasn't obvious about it. Never raised her voice, never insulted him outright. But when he raised his hand, she barely looked his way. When he got an answer right, she moved on without a second thought. But if he got one wrong, rare as it was, she lingered, almost as if she enjoyed it. Elijah noticed. So did a few of his classmates. Yo, she barely even looks at you. Tyler Whitman, the kid sitting next to him, whispered one afternoon. You got, like, teacher invisibility or something? Elijah only shrugged. Guess I do. But today, something felt different. Ms. Thornton kept glancing his way, more than usual, and not in a way that signaled trouble. It was something else. Anticipation. The lesson started, just another history discussion, something about the Civil War. Elijah took notes, listening, waiting for the usual pattern to play out. And then, something unexpected. Elijah, Ms. Thornton called, her voice crisp. Why don't you answer this one? Heads turned. Elijah blinked. She never called on him. He sat up straighter, eyes scanning the board. General Sherman's march to the sea was a military campaign meant to destroy the Confederacy's resources and morale. Ms. Thornton hummed. Not bad. Not bad. It was a textbook-perfect answer. A few students exchanged glances. Tyler shot him a look that screamed, "What was that about?" The lesson carried on, but something had shifted. Ms. Thornton wasn't ignoring him anymore. She was watching. And then, just before the bell rang, she made her move. Elijah, she said, just as students began packing up. Stay behind for a moment. A few heads turned again. No one said anything. Elijah took his time putting his notebook away, then walked up to her desk. I overheard you talking the other day, she said, clasping her hands together. About your grandfather. Elijah frowned. What about him? You said he was a musician? Something in her tone made the air feel heavier. He nodded. Yeah. He was a pianist. Played jazz. Ms. Thornton's lips curled. Not quite a smirk, but something close. Interesting. She leaned back, tapping her fingers against the desk. You must have picked up a thing or two. Elijah didn't answer right away. He wasn't sure where this was going, but it didn't feel right. A little, he admitted. Her smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. Good to know. The bell rang. Elijah grabbed his bag and turned toward the door. But her voice stopped him. Tomorrow, let's see what you've got. He turned back. What? She gestured toward the old upright piano in the corner of the room, covered in dust. You'll play something for the class. Elijah stared at her. A few students had paused near the doorway, their eyes flicking between them. Why? Ms. Thornton tilted her head, as if the question amused her. Why not? She said simply. You said your grandfather played. I'm sure you have some of that talent in you. Elijah knew that tone. It wasn't curiosity. It wasn't encouragement. It was a setup. But if she thought he was going to back down, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Ms. Thornton still controlled the lesson, but the usual rhythm was gone. The students weren't as engaged. The energy had shifted. When the bell finally rang, chairs scraped against the floor as students packed up their things, murmuring to each other as they filed out. Elijah slung his bag over his shoulder and moved toward the door. But just before he stepped out, Elijah. He turned back. For a moment, Miss Thornton looked like she might say something meaningful, something real. Instead, her expression hardened. I hope you understand that this is still my classroom. Elijah studied her. Then, in the same calm, steady voice he had used before, he said, "I know." A beat of silence passed between them. Then he walked out. In the hallway, Tyler caught up to him. "Bro, what was that?" He shook his head, grinning. You just flipped everything upside down." Elijah let out a breath.
Yeah.
Tyler nudged his shoulder. "So, you gonna play again?" Elijah thought about it. About the feeling of the keys beneath his fingers. About the music filling the room. He smiled.
Yeah.
"I think I will." Because today, he hadn't just played music. He had been heard. Elijah walked home that afternoon with a lightness in his step. The sun hung low over West Markham Street, casting long shadows as he weaved through the familiar route. The weight he had been carrying since yesterday, the tension, the doubt, was gone. At the corner store near his neighborhood, he stopped to grab a bottle of water. Mr. Henson, the older man who owned the shop, watched him with a knowing look. "You look like a kid who just did something important." Elijah hesitated. Then he smiled. "Maybe I did." By the time he reached home, the warm scent of fried catfish and cornbread filled the air. His mother stood at the stove, humming softly as she flipped a fillet. "You're home late." Elijah dropped his bag by the door and sat at the kitchen table. "Had a long day." His mother glanced over her shoulder. "Good or bad?"
He thought about it.
About the way the room had fallen silent. The way Miss Thornton had looked at him. The way his classmates had seen him differently, really seen him, for the first time,